All right, so I'm Corinne Stanforth, and I'm interviewing the big sis today. Can you go ahead and tell us your name and where you live now?
Yeah, so my name is Olivia or Liv Stanforth, and I'm Corinne's big sister. And I'm from Cincinnati, but right now I'm living in Dayton.
And what are you doing up in Dayton?
I am a second year med student at Wright State's med school. So,
And then you said we were born in Cincy. Do you want to talk a little bit about, like, more specifically where you grew up?
yeah, so I pretty much spent all of my childhood in Claremont County, which is where my family still lives now. I was the firstborn, and my parents lived downtown for like a couple years when I was little. But we moved to Claremont County, and I've lived there since I was maybe like 4 or 5, and lived there all through until I went to college, which I went to University of Dayton. So I've been in Dayton for a while now. And yeah, it's right on the river and very east of Cincinnati. So that's usually how I describe it to people.
What kind of stuff did you do there growing up? Or
Growing,
did we do, I
yeah, I mean, we did.
guess?
Um, I feel like we really had, I mean, of course we did a lot. We did, the typical little kid stuff, but I feel like where we grew up really allowed us to play outside a lot. And so some of my best memories of things we did were things like playing hide and go seek in the woods or going hiking with mom, and she would show us the different trees. We played a lot of sports outside. My dad taught us how to hit softballs in the backyard. We played soccer a lot together, a lot of drawing with chalk, basketball once we got a little bit older. So a lot of my memories are centered around being outside, I would say.
Yeah, I know my favorite was definitely hide and seek walkie-talkie.
Yes, that was a class.
Um, okay, cool. So what kind of things from your childhood, whether it's like an activity or an idea or story or a song, do you think like you still hold with you today or like are still really important in your life now?
Hmm. That's a really good question. Well, I feel like growing up, especially with having such an emphasis on being in nature, our mom always taught us that like everything is kind of connected to everything else. And I feel that, back then she kind of would say it in a way to where my like 5-year-old brain would be like, oh, if I litter, it'll end up causing problems in nature down the road and, it'd be bad. But now I feel like I really kind of implement that practice, I guess, subconsciously in my day to day life because especially being a med student and going to be having people's like health at my hands in the future, I feel like really understanding that every piece of every person is connected to other pieces and really trying to focus on um, realizing the impact you can make on many of those pieces at once, or the impact on one piece will affect another piece. And I also don't litter still, so that's good.
Good. I'm glad. That's reassuring. Yeah, no, that's cool. I like how you're relating that back to like medicine too, because I know when she taught us that, it was like, oh, Barry Commoner's like four laws of ecology, and like she had
Yep.
that whole like presentation at grade school. But it is cool how like it applies everywhere, not just like don't litter, or just like stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, kind of in a similar vein, a little bit, what's one of your favorite stories that you've heard either about your grandparents' life or even like their family's life that you heard from them? Just like one that you really thought was cool or think about a lot.
Oh my gosh, I feel like our grandparents have been so great at telling us stories. There's so many. Um, I do have to say, one that always sticks with me, and I think it's because she's told me it many times, is Grandma Nancy's story about how she was staying at, I think it was her grandma's or her aunt's, and she was younger, and they heard this awful, awful screaming coming from their backyard. And they were worried. They were like, is somebody hurt? Is something going on? and it just continued and continued, and it sounded like it was she described it as right outside her window. And so, you know, being little, I was like, what is going on? What's happening? Is it like a ghost? Is it, you know, a criminal? And um then she ended up telling us that they found out it was actually a panther in their backyard that was up in a tree and making just the most intense screaming noise. And it sounded exactly like a woman screaming, she said, which I thought was kind of wild. And especially when I was younger, I was like, I can't believe that happened to her. But even still hearing it, I'm like, wow.
Do you know, yeah, do you know where they were for that?
Um, I think
I know.
she was in Ohio, but I feel like the panther escaped from somewhere,
Okay.
like a zoo or a petting, not petting zoo, but like, you know, some kind of like mobile animal exhibit, like something.
Yeah, because I was like wondering, because I was like, do we have panthers here? I feel like I just heard that story from her like recently for the first time. She told me like over Christmas break or something. I was like, why haven't I not heard this story?
It's a crazy story.
Yeah, there was that one. And then what was the other one? I think it was Grandma who told us it about like thinking there was a little girl outside her door, and then they found out a house had burned down like not far away.
Yeah. So that was, I think, our great great grandma, or um yeah, I think it was our great great grandma Vesta, and her husband lived in what mom describes as like a holler in, I want to say Georgia, but I'm not entirely sure on that. And they're, you know, it's pretty isolated. Everyone's houses are kind of in their own land, and they saw a little girl crying and screaming when it was dark out down the lane of their holler. And she was like calling to her and saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And the little girl wouldn't answer, just kept crying. And finally, our great great grandma, went inside and got her husband and was like, "Let's go see what's going on." And once she came back outside with him, the little girl was gone. And they walked all the way down to the end of the lane and they couldn't find her anywhere. And then the next day, they got news that the house in the holler next to theirs burnt down, and the entire family was in it and died in the fire, including their little girl. And so, according to them, they think that maybe, you know, they witnessed like her right before she died, in like a spiritual way, not actually her standing there. But yeah,
Yeah, that one blew my mind.
yeah,
And
I know.
it's funny because like I was thinking when she was telling me, I was thinking about like us in her back room in her house, like with like Kat and Sid, like our cousins, like telling stories like that and being like, oh my gosh. And then like she's telling me like this one that actually happened. And I'm like, whoa.
Oh, I know. I know. I feel like our family has always had a little bit of like a spiritual, supernatural connection, but I've never had that. Like, I mean, I like believe it. Our family has enough of it, but it's never personally happened to me, I would say.
Yeah, I think mom has a lot of that for
Mhm.
our immediate family. Anyway, I think she took most of that. So, did you or your family ever at a time in your life would you say you identified as Appalachian? And if you did or do, like at what periods of your life and in what sort of way?
Yeah, so I feel like definitely, because it's been so ingrained into our family's past, like especially obviously mom's side. I'm not too sure if dad's side has much of it, but um we were taught the music since we were little kids, like with grandpa and grandma and mom. And then mom had her other band, Sunset Dawn. And so between the two, I feel like we just got flooded with all of that music and culture, which was really neat to grow up with. And then eventually we kind of got integrated into that by learning how to play music. And you were taught by grandma, and I was taught by grandpa how to play instruments. And we eventually became part of that. And so I feel like in that aspect, I've really felt that that is kind of our heritage and our roots. I do wish I implemented it more in my day to day life. I haven't played music as much, but I definitely would still say I identify with that being part of who I am.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And it was funny just the other day, like when I was having my interview, for school, someone asked me, they're like, tell me about the origin of the name of your band, because like Teleco. And
Yeah.
it's like interesting because like we're not as like directly exposed, like you know what I mean? Like I feel like that name like started before we were even born, you know what I mean? And it's just like cool that it's like, oh well, we're a part of it now. And like, I don't know, just as I was explaining that, I was like, oh, that's neat.
Yeah, no, it's really been going on a long time, which is cool.
What's your favorite song though? I asked Aubrey this too, I think. What your favorite song to play with the band?
Oh man. I think my favorite song for us all to do together is probably I've always liked Wayfaring Stranger, and I've always liked Red Rocking Chair just because we all kind of have a part in that one and we do it so much that feels natural. I would say my favorite song to do with Grandpa was probably Sitting on Top of the World because we would switch verses every couple verses, and that was kind of like our little duet we like to do together.
Yeah. And you hated the Peachtree verse. That was always Grandpa.
I did. I would make Grandpa sing it, and he always would. Never made me sing it.
That's funny though, because I did ask Aubrey that, I'm remembering now, and her answer was Wayfaring Stranger too, and or for one of them. And her reason was like the intro that Grandpa played, and then he taught it to you, and Eli knows it now. And
Yeah.
mine's actually Red Rocking Chair. So I guess we all kind of had like we're on the same wavelength with that. So
Yeah,
that's
we definitely are. I really liked all the minor songs we played. Like besides Sitting on Top of the World, those two are in a minor key, and I just liked the way it all sounded.
yeah. Yeah. And anyone I didn't have to sing on, I liked as
Yeah.
well. Well, is there anything else that you want to share as we wrap up our little chat?
Um, I don't think so, really. Nothing comes to mind unless you have like a specific question you need to ask me, but I feel like this interview has been really interesting. I love thinking back on these memories.
Yeah, it's always fun like to see where it goes, because I like kind of like I'm like, oh, like I'll bring up this, like, oh, we'll shout out this, but then like it's just cool because it just kind of becomes like, well, wherever whatever comes up is wherever it'll go. And it's just like fun to like have different memories come in like while we're talking and stuff.
Definitely.
Well, thanks, Liv.
Of course.
Have a good day. Bye.
See you later.